So we're going to present to you tonight a little bit about our Gifted and Talented program that we are planning for implementation beginning for next year. I'm Jim Schwartz, the superintendent of Avondale Schools. This is Mr. Marty Alwert. He is our assistant superintendent for student services. And then behind us is Ms. Carmen Kennedy. She is our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. And so we've all been integral in terms of the planning of this program. This is an exciting venture for us. This is a new program for the school district. We are looking to create a magnet program at the elementary level, where we're looking at beginning, and really centering upon a section or two beginning next year at the 3rd and 4th grade level, and then subsequently years growing the program on both ends from there, which we'll talk about a little bit. But this Gifted and Talented program is one that I think we feel very passionate about in terms of really meeting the needs of the population of students where their needs haven't been met. And increasingly, we're noting that this is a population that's often ignored, is not often differentiated for. And subsequently, as you look nationally, it's often a population that has seen some of the highest dropout rates in schools. Most people stereotypically think it's the at-risk student, it's the low-ability student that's dropping out. Actually, research is showing us, and the trend is showing us that it's actually the top-end kids, it's the higher-ability kids who are getting disenfranchised with school and dropping out at a younger and younger age. And so, we're seeing this as something that is, again, of a national concern and something that we feel we need to begin to address. So we feel that we are in a ripe area, a ripe condition for doing this. This is a program also that is certainly going to meet the needs of the reauthorization of the Every Student Succeeds Act, the SSA, which is the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind. In that legislation, or in that reauthorization, gifted and talented, a lot of folks, a lot of gifted and talented families were lobbying for inclusion back into that being resurgence or refocused area, and it is in that document for schools to be enforced to address the needs of this end of the continuum for students. And so we're very happy to see that is something that is being placed in that legislation. So as we look at our program is really looking at how we can best meet those needs of those students through sort of a unique environment. This environment looks to be very much of a project-based environment, constructivist-based, a lot of choice, a lot of voice of students in this environment, which we'll talk about shortly. So, one of the things that we want to be able to do in this program is to give students the ability to really challenge their thinking and challenge each other's thinking. It's a very collaborative environment. And in terms of working around content, students are going to not only work through the content of state and national curriculums, but also they're going to have their own spin on how to extend that with the teacher's guidance. So it's going to be a very unique environment. Again, accessing and having students help to channel with, again, student voice, student choice, that curriculum in the classroom. So our philosophy of gifted education is really not just adhering to a high achiever. We certainly recognize that there's a difference between a high-achieving child and a gifted child. It's not the same. Oftentimes, stereotypically, folks think that's what it is. It's just a kid who gets high test scores. No, it's not. When we look at a gifted student, we're looking at all types of things on a creativity continuum. We're looking at, yes, high achiever. We're looking at somebody who can learn it typically at a faster pace. But we're also looking at the student who is has that creative sense to them, that critical thinking, that avid reader. We're looking for a certain profile of a student that is much beyond just a test score. So, so as you look at the definition up here, we're looking for that sense of creativity really to help guide that classroom. Again, with the facilitation of the teacher. And in this classroom, obviously, social and emotional needs, will be addressed of students through this program as they have unique needs, typically. The program is also going to be based on a portfolio approach. So unlike many types of programs that are just cut score based, where the student is given a certain test, and if they make the mark, they're in. If they don't make the mark, they're not. That's not this type of a program. Although there is testing that is involved so that we have a mark of student performance, we're really looking at the teacher referrals, the observations, parent referrals, creativity testing, which we'll talk about. We look at the Torrance test and things like that. But really it's a portfolio approach. It's really looking at that whole child as we look at making decisions about whether this classroom is right for that student or not. So, describing gifted students. Children who are gifted are those who do things a little bit earlier, a little bit faster, a little bit better, perhaps a little bit differently than most other children. And it's really that most differently piece is what we're really concentrating on in this particular program. So, as you look at the profile of a gifted student, you're seeing many attributes that deals with they're an independent thinker, they're self-motivated, they have a strong sense of justice, they have a sophisticated sense about them, a sophisticated sense of humor about them. They're very expressive often, creative, but you can see they can get easily off task, they're easily distracted, they can be absent-minded, they can challenge authority, particularly when they're bored. So you can see, in a sense, how we're more or less defining a gifted student for our purposes. So it's not just the overall high-achieving, high-test taker type student. So as we create our program, it's really looking at a magnet-type situation, which will be students that are clustered together of similar ability level, more of a multi-age type of an environment. So our mission statement is to meet the unique academic, social, and emotional needs. That our principles, our educational experiences will fit the needs of each student. It's going to be ability-based, mixed age, as I said, a multi-age type setting. We're talking to start with a 3rd, 4th grade level. And then, of course, providing support for the social and emotional needs of that student population. And then high academic standards, individual learning geared toward each student. When we look at, again, needs for gifted, these are often students who lose interest because of the pacing in a traditional classroom is slower. And oftentimes they disengage. These are students that find working with like-minded abilities much easier than differently. They grasp the subject matter pretty quickly and then they disengage if they're not further challenged or if they're not further given an extension of a task to further their knowledge base in that particular area. They're limited in their learning potential, waiting for the class to catch up. So oftentimes these students become disengaged because they're waiting for everybody else to catch up to where they're at. So really what we're looking at is this type of a student in a like-ability level class where they have a flexible and challenging curriculum that they're working in. And again, a very project-based type of an environment, discovery, exploratory-based environment. So our tentative plan as we begin to roll this concept out is, we'll show you in a second, but we're currently working with consultants from Grosse Pointe. So if you're familiar with Grosse Pointe's magnet program, that is very similar to what the design of this program is. We have visited several gifted programs in the area, Livonia, Saginaw. The one that, Bay City, the one that most kind of adheres with our philosophy is the Grosse Pointe model. The Grosse Pointe model has been in place now for 26 years. It's been tried and true, tested, and they also operate with a sort of portfolio approach, more of a project-based approach, and that was something that really kind of endeared us to the concept that we're going toward. And they're actively working with us as we develop this program. So if you're at all familiar with Grosse Pointe's program, this will be very similar. So for 17-18, as I had mentioned earlier, we're looking at a 3rd and 4th grade multi-age classroom right here in this building, Woodland Elementary. This would be, again, through a portfolio-based selection process. In 18-19, we would then grow the program on both ends. We look at a 2-3 and a 4-5 on the other end. We have found that when we're implementing programs, it really is most beneficial to start in the middle versus one end working toward the other, starting at K, going 5, or going 5, going back to K. If you start in the middle, you're better able to develop your scope and sequence of your curriculum before knowing the skill base you need before you get into that level and where you're going after that level. So if you're starting in the middle, as you branch forth on both ends, you have more substance to your curriculum. So that's why we're sort of targeting that 3rd and 4th grade level.
So one of the reasons that Woodland was chosen, not just because Aaron's such an exceptional principal, is also because of the working space. The pods outside the room, the children have a little bit more room to be creative, to use their talents, not confined just to a classroom, but have an open space to work as well.
Anybody that's not familiar with the building is free to walk around after as well.
Yeah, please do. You'll see there's open pod areas around, which is very conducive to essentially maker spaces. If you're familiar with the makerspace model, that's coming into play with project-based learning in many schools around the country. This has the design of the Beasley Transformer used for that purpose, so that there's an additional collaboration space outside the classroom, as well as nice-sized classrooms as well. Also, the locale of Woodland is seated really where we're sensing a lot of interest in this program. We have a lot of interest from folks in Rochester, lots of interest from folks in Troy. We have a lot of homeschoolers, a homeschooling population that's around in this area. So this seems to be a locale that's very conducive to where there seems to be quite a bit of demand for this type of a program. So we have a number of topics, if you will, about questions that folks typically have about the program, and that is cost. Is there a cost to be in this program? Are there fees associated with this program? And the answer is no. There is no additional tuition that anybody pays to be, this is, we're a public school, this is a public school setting. There's not an additional charge or additional tuition to be used. The class size is going to be on par with the other classes at elementary. We're targeting, on the order of 26, 28 students, typical classroom size. Again, when we look at the classrooms in Grosse Pointe in your model, that's what they're running their classrooms at, and that's pretty consistent where you see other programs as well. So trying to keep that consistent with our other rooms. Transportation, folks are asking, is transportation provided? Transportation is not provided for this program. If you're an in-district parent, an in-district family, you would apply for this program and automatically be considered for in-district school of choice. We have that in-district transfer options for folks. And so we would operate it around those same principles that your child would attend on that in-district transfer, if you're not a Woodland resident, to be able to attend the school. But transportation will be provided by you as the parent in those circumstances. Student support.
So student support services, we really want to make sure that these children have all the services they need to be successful. So one of the things that we've been looking at through our research, looking at the Grosse Point models and others, is an increase in social work services to the students in the room, helping them with some of their affective and social ways to help them so they can be successful, but also integrate them with their peers, so they could be accessing gym and art and music, not only as a group, but also possibility with their peers as well.
What do you mean by social work?
Well, one of the things that often is that kids in the gifted and talented arena have different social emotional needs. And sometimes they can be isolated by themselves, sometimes that, they don't make peers and they don't make friends easily. So we want to make sure we help them any way we possibly can. Some kids may need no support, other kids may need some support, and we want to be able to provide that to them as needed.
So what would that look like? Like, would they have like an individualized social work session? Would it be done like in a group setting where you bring multiple students in that are struggling, having the same socialization issue and work together? What does that support look like?
It's a great question. So back in the 70s, when students with disabilities, it was individuals with disability education first came out, gifted and talented was actually part of the original law. And then in the 80s, it was let go, okay? So back then they had IEPs, individual education plans. And each child was looked at individually. Some children might need social work, some may need other types of supports and services. Some may need their social work within the bed of the classroom, embedded into the classroom. Some may be pulled out into a small group. Some may need individual therapy sessions. So what we would do is look at that on an individual student-by-student basis, and that would be determined. Some students will come to us already with IEPs. Some students won't have IEPs. Some students may come to us with a 504 plan under the American with Disabilities Act. Some may not. Some we may say, hey, we can give a 504 plan if needed, but we're going to provide those services to help our children succeed.
Okay, so like anything that they're receiving in their IEP, they would continue to receive within this program?
Sure. IEPs will be followed. Yep. Yep.
And then the curriculum, Ms. Kennedy.
So, what I share with you and you pick up, the curriculum is basically the content of what students learn. And as Dr. Schwartz said earlier, we are mandated by the state of Michigan nationally that we provide the curriculum to all students. But the difference is, more than likely in terms of a classroom like this, is that, and I'll use my visual here, sometimes in classrooms, we have to do a breadth, all this stuff. And in a classroom of gifted and talented, it's more of depth. And so I like to use the phrase, and if you look at this booklet here, which was nicely designed by Annette McAvoy, my words, but not my creation whatsoever. If you look at the phrase down here, teachers as leaders of learners. So maybe the classroom looks a little bit different, that teacher is flexible, that teacher is creative, they think outside the box, they push the kids to think outside the box. As we talked about, the kids will be in a classroom of like-minded, intellectually curious students. And maybe that's the difference, that's all the difference in the world, is that they are with their peers. You know, maybe they don't feel out of place, and I heard this from some of our parents, they don't feel out of place when at recess, they'd rather read a book versus playing outside, whatever the case may be. But this brochure that I am sharing with you, as we move, our strategic plan is called Avondale 2020, and there are one's particular goal is about student learning, and we are moving beyond the textbook. We are beyond textbooks and ditto sheets and everything else. And so what I am sharing with you, this is a instructional philosophy across our district. And then you will probably say, well, what's the difference in this gifted and talented room? Well, as I said before, your students will have the opportunity to be with like-minded students. Teacher, we understood, I think when we met in the spring, it was before Good Friday, right?
Yep.
Good Friday. we understood very clearly the teacher is the key component to this program, and that's also very important. Sometimes, you know, if you have an 8-year-old basically telling you something, you're like, whoa, I'm the teacher, I have the degrees, I have the education, whoa. Kind of have to remove that ego right there and kind of step back and say, okay, allow me to lead you down the journey, the pathway in which you wish to go. So the kids are leaders of their learning, and the teacher is a facilitator of their learning. So we're doing project-based learning, and here's a explanation of project-based learning, and then more information about project-based learning, anything you probably want to know. It's just an example, project-based learning. So instead of activities and lessons being a one-day shot, the learning is spread across weeks and days. An example we have going on to high school tomorrow, we have teachers participating in what we call Teacher Lab, and they're focusing on project-based learning. We have teachers in art, science, math, and social studies. So project-based learning is also about cross-curricular learning. What do the arts have to do with math and science, so forth and so on? Yes?
Is there a certain certification for this particular project-based learning for the teachers?
No.
Okay.
Probably the greatest requirement is our teachers' professional learning.
Okay.
Yes.
So no additional training?
Additional training, yes, but a certification means that in the state of Michigan, you don't need to be certified as a project-based learning teacher.
Okay.
It's more of a professional training piece to it.
Okay. And where did they get that training from? Is that from?
Yeah. So a couple areas.
Okay.
This particular piece from here, we are not only working with Grosse Pointe, but we are also working with Oakland Schools. They're our support system in Oakland County. And there's a woman, her name is Kim Koskis, and she's known as the project-based learning expert in Oakland County. And she had her training, you can probably look this up on the internet. She had her training at the Buck Institute for Education. And nationally, and actually internationally, they are known for project-based learning. So we have teachers who train and learn under Kim, and then we continue to spread the love, so to speak. So a teacher lab is a way in which we help teachers continue to learn that job-embedded professional development. Instead of sitting in a bunch of rows and chairs and reading a PowerPoint, teachers are actually hands-on, just like we want kids to be hands-on and minds-on. That's the philosophy behind it.
And with that being said, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is there additional training for parent support, or how is that?
There's a vision to provide that
Okay.
in terms of our Avondale 2020, because we understand very clearly, you know, you have your student come home and you're like, what is that? You know, I learned in sitting in rows and desks and cooperative learning. What's all that about? So we will be doing our part in terms of educating parents that classrooms no longer are about rows and a teacher standing up front. Classrooms are now about clusters and teachers taking a back seat to learning and being a partner with their students versus always the person who is giving the information. They are leading kids and expanding their thinking.
This leads into really, workplace skills.
Yes.
I mean, when you look at the trends that are occurring in the workplace, for instance, in the big three, you can go to GM, and essentially GM is clearing out all their offices of cubicles. What once was a very isolated type of a job, and you got in your cubicle and that's where you stayed from, 8:30 to 4:30 or whatever. Those are all being cleared out now for collaborative workspaces. Now if you go to GM, you see these big, huge rooms that are nothing but collaborative workspaces. And that's where project teams come together to plan. Well, we're trying to emulate the same thing. We're trying to bring about that type of an environment in our schools, because that's where our kids are going. That's going to be the world of work for our kids. So we do them a disservice if we don't go in that direction. So the environment that we're attempting to create, when we talk about maker spaces and those kind of things, is that industry evolution of what their workplace is going to become. And this classroom is going to be very much like that project team-oriented type of
Constant.
instruction.
It's the cornerstone of that classroom. And another piece about this classroom is that wonderful word of synergy. When you bring people together with like minds, the whole is greater than its individual parts. Wonderful things happen. So The information, again, I'm just sharing with you, this is not about curriculum, this is not about content. I'm a believer about the instructional and the learning part. No, it's the most important. That's key to what we're doing. So this is just some information about where we're going. And again, probably the key piece to this program is that teacher. That teacher has to be great at yoga. Yoga is all about flexibility, right? And passing the pain and like, oh, downward dog, how many more times I gotta do that? But you gotta do it, right? So the key piece is the teacher in all this as well. And that is what we are currently going through right now in terms of finding that teacher and actually getting them on board now, knowing that we're opening the program in 2017.
So if, you know, the program is a split level,
Yes.
how is the curriculum phased? You know, how do you accommodate Common Core, preparation for the M-STEP? You know, how does that all play a factor? Because if you have a third grader entering this, what is the curriculum? I mean,
So that would be crafted based on the students. For example, right now at Woodland, there's a 2-3 classroom,
okay.
and at Graham, I think it's a 3-4 or 2-3. I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head. But that is something that we craft that maybe this year we follow third grade curriculum, say in social studies, but next year we follow the fourth grade curriculum, social studies. So it has to be crafted. And sometimes the difference may be from a second grade to a third grader, and I'm picking social studies as a piece, may not be that different. Maybe it's just more in depth. So that's the beautiful magic of that teacher, is to be able to make that happen. Multi-age in this district is not new. So it's not a new concept for us. So it's something that we're used to, but it has to be very purposely, intentionally crafted. So we make sure they won't miss. That's the bottom line, right? Don't want them to miss.
They're gonna have curriculum, they have objectives that they have to, and there's gonna still be some structure to
Oh,
the
yes.
classroom and the curriculum, and it's, yes, you have this time to expand your learning into another area, but yet it's still gonna be very kind of structured
Yes.
and directed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Facilitation. Some people may walk into a classroom like this and they may think it's chaotic, and I like to call it organized chaos, because kids should be given voice and opportunity. So yes, to answer your question, still structured.
Okay.
So other questions that we often, receive on social interaction pieces, extracurricular pieces. This is a program that's going to be sitting in the school, which means that there'll be occasions where they'll be, with their peers that are not in the program, such as lunch times, recess times, and that interaction, I think, is necessary. Because kids need to be able to interact with folks that aren't necessarily at their level and so on. Because the world is, not everybody's at that ability level, so if that's all we acquaint them with, that doesn't do them a service. So that social interaction piece is going to be huge with their peers outside of the program. Extracurricular, there will be extracurricular activities that are planned for these students as well as the student body at large. That would be either within the school day or outside of the school day, before or after. I don't know if either one of you want to talk about those, or?
So one of the things that some of our parents have asked, will they have the opportunity to participate in clubs and after-school activities? And they sure will. We would encourage that. They can do that. We'd also be looking at the same opportunities other kids would have within the day. Like, if the fourth grade was to go to a certain field trip, we would want our GTE kids to go as well.
Parental involvement. This is a program that's going to rely heavily on parent involvement. We want parents to be involved. We want parents to be involved from the get-go. When we talk about the teacher and how important the teacher is, being involved in that process of the teacher selection. We certainly want parent input. And as we go through the design of the curriculum, the setting up of the program, assistance in the classroom with specific projects, really being, sort of guides on the sides for that classroom in terms of helping that teacher along the way.
And research shows us that that the gifted and talented population, the parents really want to be more involved with their children's education, and we're going to encourage it, and we're actually going to promote it.
And in the placement of siblings, you know, as a child coming into the program, particularly from outside of this school, it's in-district transfer, questions about, well, I have, you know, 2 other children besides the one you've accepted, are they also coming to the same school? And yes, we would make those provisions for your family, so to speak, to move to the school. So it's not like you have to take, you know, transport one child to that building and then one child to this building. We would make it so that your family is accommodated in one building.
And that's what I wanted to clarify. When you said the placement of the sibling, like the sibling could go to Woodland, doesn't mean that they're automatically.
Yeah,
going
you
to
have the
church.
option.
Right.
Yeah.
But you would, would they be grandfathered in?
We,
I mean,
we,
obviously you would want to make
we
sure
would
it's
grandfather
fit.
them in if you desired that
Okay.
to happen.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they will participate in all the specials, art, music,
Okay.
art.
But that last comment he just made, desired in, how are students selected then?
We're going to talk about that.
And
Question.
Yeah.
Because you touched on it. Now, with them being in this classroom, obviously they're in a classroom where they're like-minded peers, but as far as like lunch and recess and the specials and things like that go, are they also moving and shifting in their day with just their class, or are they mingled in with the rest of the grade level?
There will be times in the day where they'll be with their other grade level peers,
Okay.
with lunch, recess, those types of things, because we feel that's important. I mean, they've got to be able to interact and socialize with students that aren't of their ability, because that's the real world, right? So, we don't want to give them the wrong impression of the real world. So there are going to be those opportunities where they're going to be meshed with their other grade level colleagues, or peers. So the process of nomination, there's parent nominations and there's teacher nominations. So as we start to look at the process of selection, we have the application, there's an application available on our school website, which we'll show you toward the end of the presentation. We'll put the website up so you can see where the links all are. And those applications would be completed by November 18th, so just before Thanksgiving. In your packet, you'll see there's a salmon colored paper. That's a copy of the application. So you can take a look at that. It really addresses questions to you as a parent, you know, relative to the kinds of things that you see in your child that are very important for us to know as we look at consideration. Because, you know, who knows your child better than you? So we want to give folks an opportunity to be able to explain what are all those gifted attributes that you believe your child possesses. And there's a scale in which you can mark your child in terms of, again, different characteristics of giftedness that we'll also be, taking a look at. And teachers likewise have a similar instrument by which they will be looking at a child from their perspective. And that also will be filled out by them and completed on the same timeline. So they have a characteristic scale that's similar to that. It's a little different, but
It's on the next slide.
is it on the next slide?
Are you looking for both for child? So
Not
the
necessarily.
parent and the teacher? Okay.
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
We'll be getting teacher input. Like if we receive a parent nomination, obviously we'll be then searching, going back to that teacher and getting input on that. Do you have to have both a teacher nomination and a parent nomination? No.
Okay.
In some cases, we'll have a parent nomination. In some cases, we'll only have a teacher nomination. And then if we have a teacher nomination, then we'll be getting in touch with those parents and seeing if they're interested, if they want to pursue this, that they've been nominated. So you don't have to have both.
Okay.
But we will be getting information for both.
So the
If
nomination.
either one
is-
does
Right,
a
thanks,
nomination.
and that was my,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Can the nomination also come from the organization that the child is a part of, like an after-school, or there's some social organizations that the child is a part of?
It
Can
could
that
come,
be taken?
it could. I would put those things through a parent nomination, so
Okay.
as an attachment.
Okay.
So if you have a recommendation from an outside agency or another other folks you work with or works with your child, that can go as an attachment to the parent. That's how I would do that. So along with the applications that we would need to have turned in, we also are looking at, obviously, performance data. We're using iReady, which is close to the NWEA test, if you're familiar with NWEA, particularly in math and reading. Those are tests that your child gets through the course of their curriculum in school anyway, so it's not something that is an extra test that they take, it's something that they automatically already do. We'll be grabbing that information. Faunus and Pinnell is, again, testing that's done within the confines of our curriculum anyway. We would be grabbing that information about English language arts skills from that test, the nomination forms, and then the teacher will submit information regarding nomination, language arts talent indication. There's a little checklist that they have and some supporting information that they would fill out regarding language arts. Same thing with math. And then they have a gifted and talented characteristics indicator that they will be filling out, and any additional information that they have pertaining to, again, characteristics of giftedness that are included in their packet. And then lastly, there's a creative thinking test. The Torrance test of creative thinking to measure creativity. We feel that that's an important measurement outside the scope of just content knowledge. Where are they in the realm of creativity? And so that's a test that we would be giving folks that have been nominated. So we would be setting up testing dates and so on for that, because this is one test that we do not do as a regular part of our curriculum. These are all a regular part of our curriculum, but this one is not. So this would be a separate test that we would set up for your child to come in. It's a 30-minute test, so it's not lengthy.
When would the Torrance test be taken?
So that'll be right after the 18th, probably the week of Thanksgiving, the short week, or the week after Thanksgiving.
So if you submit your nomination.
Yeah, we'll take care of that. You don't have to come in after school or on the weekend. We'll take care of it right during the school day.
Yeah.
So if you notice, one test that's not up here is an IQ test. And if you notice, there's some programs that say you must have 125 or 130 IQ or above. And again, it goes back to what Dr. Schwartz said, is we're looking for a child with many different attributes of giftedness, not just smarts.
But if you have information relative to IQ that you've had either from prior school or from a psychologist or whomever, that's important information for us, and that can be included within your parent nomination as an attachment as well for supporting information.
If our IQ tests and evaluations were completed through the district here, would we need to attach those or just indicate in our application?
Just indicate in the application. We have access to them.
We'll get that information.
Dr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Sorry, quick question. What about the Iowa test or any of the, like, if our child in particular is moved from different schools, so
Okay.
is something like that eligible versus the iReady?
We could put that as an attachment. We would still use the iReady data, the iReady test, as that. But if you have other types of tests that you've taken, you can include that as supporting information.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if he's gone through all of these yet. So that's something that will happen this year. So I just wanted to understand.
I think they've been doing it.
We've been doing the iReady as part of the curriculum.
I'm saying our child wasn't in.
But if they're not here, I mean, if
If they're not here,
yeah.
if
He is now.
they're coming in,
Yeah, I'm just saying by November 18th. I don't know whether we'll have
they would
cycled
take
through
the,
all.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then secondly, are you asking for us to approach the teacher and get the,
No.
the burden of collecting?
No, we'll
the-
get all that for you.
Okay, thank you.
We would do
Yeah.
that for you.
That's great, okay.
We're asking you if you're interested to submit your
Okay.
packet, your nomination, and then we take it from there. We'll go to the teacher and we'll.
Thank you. As an overachiever, I probably would have bothered them way too much. Come up with my own checklist,
I
right?
have a question.
Yes.
My son has autism.
Yep.
And a lot of these characteristics that we have,
Yep.
he's on that.
Yep.
I'm not coming in today saying that he's going to be there next year, but is there a hope that there's a way that we can work with when we see some of the characteristics or some of those things that we could do, or are there ways that could be part of two programs, or is that something you talk about much
Yep.
Yeah, we would never deny a child based on disability. So, you know, we feel there'll be some children in here with some unique characteristics, and that we're gonna meet the needs, through special education support, through whatever we need to do to help them be successful. And again, one size doesn't fit all, so we're not looking for a child here, you know, we're gonna have a wide range of abilities and disabilities. So,
Absolutely.
And I have a question, you being a specialist teacher.
Yep.
Is that project-based learning going to be facilitated within that as well, where you have, I mean, what have you done project-based partners together, where we come together and we create something?
Yeah.
Is that something that we would expect to see, or something along those lines?
That's something we'd be
You mentioned
moving.
socialization,
Yeah.
that being part of it, I think in with the other classroom, but will there be an opportunity?
You're the chair.
So really, you have a great, so one of the interview questions that we've already seen is we would want parents to go to the teacher and say, is there an opportunity for this and to happen? And we want a teacher to say, wow, what a great idea, let's try to implement it.
Well, I'm
and
just
work
thinking
together.
like some of the kids that we're talking about are very musically inclined,
Sure. Yep.
or art inclined, or
Yep.
kinesthetically inclined, and
Very
they may
much.
get bored in certain situations. And
Yeah.
that's the-
So, Sean, even how, so another thing, and I know that's a really sophisticated word, another thing that we do is cultures of thinking. And so I'll pick on you for a second. So Sean is a physical education teacher at Auburn. And so he's one of our teachers who was the art teacher, music teacher, the specials, that's what we call it, who has embraced the cultures of thinking piece, because cultures of thinking is basically about those who think learn. It does not matter what setting you're in. And so yes, to answer your question specifically, we would definitely promote that project-based learning, because like tomorrow at the high school, Lee Wright, who's an art teacher, she's working with teachers from science, social studies, and math. So yes, definitely that can happen. And I'm sorry. I know you're all about it.
Sean, that's a great question, though. That really has to be one of the driving forces of a program like this. Great question.
Yep. And of course, okay, so the teacher nomination packet has, and I don't know, on your handout, the font, you will see this. But this has a checklist that's a little bit different from your orange salmon colored sheets. Similar information, but it's chunked a little differently. They've got theirs really in terms of language arts, talent indication, which we talked about. And then there's obviously the Fontes and Pinnell reading data that they document.
So
they look at math talent, and then there's the gifted and talented characteristics pages that they give indication of.
So I'm watching parents right now, and there's no, there's no score you have to be perfect to be in this program. So I don't want you to think that because a teacher fills this out one way, it would deny your child the opportunity to be in this program. So this is just one way we look at it and gives us a little bit more data about your child and help us.
If you're homeschooling this year, so you are the teacher too, would you receive that?
Sure. Sure.
And then, of course, there's narratives on other information you'd like to supply, or the teacher would supply about the child for their portfolio. So the characteristics could be interest, interest levels within certain categories. So in the parents, obviously you have your packet, again referring to those salmon-colored sheets. And then any attachments, like I said, you can attach other testing, if it's IQ testing or it's other standardized testing that you've had. You can attach that as part of the packet. Those nominations would be submitted again by the 18th of November. And then we have a coordinator. She wasn't able to make it tonight. She'll be at the one tomorrow night. But Hillary Olance is the Gifted and Talented Program Coordinator. She's also, you may be familiar with her if you've had your child in any of our early childhood programs, because she's also the coordinator in those programs, our pre-K programs. So she's excellent in terms of the coordination responsibilities. So she is, who's collecting the applications. So, you can mail them,
Multiple
email them,
ways that you
fax
can
them.
get it to us. You can mail it to us, you can email it to us, you can fax it to us, but we wanted to give you multiple ways to get this information into us.
We have a selection committee then that's going to take all of this information, the nominations, whether they're coming from the teacher, they're coming from the parent, or both. And prior to the selection committee getting together, we'll be, if it's a parent nomination, we'll be getting with the teacher to get further information about that student to take to the selection committee, and vice versa. If we're getting a teacher recommendation, we'll go to the parent to see if they're interested, and if they are, we'll be securing information from them. That selection committee is going to meet in December. And that notification will be made prior to the holiday break. There's an appeal process that is also in play just in mid to late December. And we'd like to have all of the selections made certainly by the end of this calendar year in preparation for the next school year.
So in the selection committee, we have teachers, we have teacher consultants, we have administrators, we have a really cross-selection of people who have some knowledge or have an interest to help us make sure that we're picking children that will do well in this program. So it's not one or two people saying this child, it's a number of people.
So the proposed timeline for the program is we have the parent meetings that are happening today and tomorrow. The nomination packets, as we said, are due on November 18th. We'll be having another parent meeting scheduled on November 22nd. That's for folks that haven't been able to come to these two dates. And if they receive a nomination packet and they're wondering, what is this all about? So we have sessions that are coming up for folks to get educated, particularly if their child's nominated and they're wondering why. So we'll have those. Our selection committees will be reviewing all of the necessary information on the December 6th and 7th, and the notifications will be going out shortly thereafter. There's a confirmation from parents of a couple week window, so that we can secure those slots, set those slots aside for folks. And again, this is all for in-district residents, in-district Avondale folks. As we get to the appeals, that'll be happening in mid-December, and then final decisions from those will be just before we break for the holidays. And then there will be obviously an open house for teachers to come and meet, or for folks to come and meet the teacher, and get a sense, again, of the school, classroom tours, and so on, as we approach mid to late February. Yes.
The TTCT test?
Yes.
That
Once.
begins, will that be given between the November 18th and December 6th date?
Yeah.
And will that happen during the school day?
Yes.
Okay, so it'll just,
Would be during
it's
the-
not something you have to come to,
No.
it'll just be they'll pulled and, okay.
Yep.
So we want to be able to have all those that are interested and qualified for those slots to be really in place for the following school year by the end of this calendar. And there's a reason, because whatever slots we're not filling in district, then obviously we're going to go and open for school of choice. So those are, and that process has to begin in January, because we have to identify to the state how many slots we're going to be opening for school of choice by the end of January. So that's why it's sort of on a tight timeline. We're doing in-district placements first. In-district is a priority. And then whatever leftover slots are not filled, then we'll turn external. And then there'll be a similar process of testing for school of choice students, because we cannot have a different process for them that we do for our intern folks. It's the same process, the same test that they will have. So they'll have to come in and take the IUN, they'll have to come in and do some phenol testing and Torrance testing, so we're going to have to make arrangements to do that. So, questions? Kind of threw a lot of information at you as an overview. Yes?
So for the portfolio,
should it be copies of work that the kids have done, or I have like binder of things that have been worked on? Not binders, again, but you know.
Samples of student
Samples,
work.
but should it be, can it be original stuff, or should I make copies of it all? Like, will I get it back? If it's original, I want it back.
I would say probably you can make a copy.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say copies.
Just wanna make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say copies. Yes.
I think I may be a little bit premature. My little one is in kindergarten, so I'm happy. I wanted to
That's
just
good.
come and get some information.
Yep.
So with that being said, I'm really encouraged that you're thinking about looking at the second and third grade
Mhm.
for
For the following year.
Yeah, for the following
And growing
year.
it out from there.
But looking at some of the characteristics here, I wasn't really able to get it, but I think she meets some of these qualifications. But I wanted to see if there's an opportunity or some recommendations that I should be working with her teacher and other folks to kind of see if there's some, you know, maybe a special skill set that she needs to kind of, you know, work on or before that 2018 period,
Mhm.
or some things that we should be focusing on, or at least, at the very least, be observing
Okay.
within these next couple of years.
Yep. And that would be something that we would encourage you as your child's going through with their classroom teacher to work toward that end. So, yeah.
So a piece we can start with is that you can gain access to, not like a big secret, the teacher nomination form
Mhm.
for information, and that may be a starting point.
Okay.
And then you can always contact one of us and definitely help you
Okay.
kind of navigate those waters.
Okay.
So one other area we're gonna be looking at is a child study process district-wide. So we don't wanna just worry about our third and fourth graders, we wanna worry about our preschool right through, you know, post-secondary. So if there's a child who's doing some extraordinary things in the classroom, we wanna bring that to the child study process team, and how can we help them further their skills? How can we help them, you know, go a step further and not be limited like we showed you? So we don't wanna treat that as just a third and fourth grader, but we wanna look at all of our students, K right through, and how we can find unique opportunities for our kindergartners, our first graders.
But is your
Second graders.
kindergarten in Avondale schools right now?
Yes.
Okay, at Auburn?
Yes. Yes.
Well, and we've always had the child study, but unfortunately, we tended to focus on students that needed remediation or intervention for skill building, and now we're readjusting that to look at that enrichment and supporting the students that are on kind of the other end of the continuum as well. So it's exciting as we're learning more and more about it.
The project focus, she experienced a little bit through her preschool program, and I found that she was thriving, you know, because she's only child, but she's kind of used to all that attention even. But
She's very well taken care of.
yeah, so, but
I am an only child.
And Dr. Schwartz, when you talk about most companies going that collaborative route, I work for one of the big threes, and you're right, the offices are removed, the silos are taken down, and it's just a big open space. And, I mean, you get more productivity that way.
Yep.
My second question, real quick, I'm sorry.
No.
When you talk about this collaborative project base, again, a lot of the effort and the outcome you tend to get a better outcome when diversity and inclusion is taken into consideration.
Sure.
So I'm not sure if that's an opportunity within, not saying that you have to meet a quota or anything, but I know that when students are collaborative with other diverse students, taking in those cultural nuances, you get a better,
Most definitely.
a better outcome.
Yes.
Well, and there's a lot of power in that diversity from looking at, just from simply looking at problems through different lenses,
Right.
through different perspectives.
Right.
And that's part of the curriculum for this classroom is being able to study issues and solutions to issues from all different vantage points. And that's what's going to drive a lot of some of the collaborative work that the students are going to be doing in their small groups. And that diversity is going to be a big piece of being able to really add to that conversation of looking through lenses of from different perspectives. But I think that's critical when students are examining solutions, to have all those different vantage points in consideration, and then pros and cons. Yes.
My big anxiety is more on the socio-emotional needs.
Sure.
So I know there's a lot of inclusion, there's pods, there's a lot of frenetic energy and synergy. What are the aspects of the I need to disconnect or center myself? I know that's probably a big part of
Sure.
it being like an open, classroom setting, but
Sure.
I just, as much as their advancement, they also need the ability to kind of
Yeah.
go do their own thing for a little bit. And,
Good
Yep.
point.
You're right.
and I know the social worker was an aspect. What's your optimal ratio for student to leader, including those emotional needs and stuff? So I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, so
Because
one of the
otherwise
biggest
you're gonna have
factors,
meltdowns,
yeah,
right?
one of the biggest factors we learned about gifted and talented is the unique social emotional needs of each student. And we don't type each student as they're all gonna be the same. So one of the things that we're using this year is we're preparing right now. So we've got our social workers right now, all of our social workers at the elementary level, looking at different conferences and different professional development opportunities to understand the unique situations of all students. So we're gonna have students with different sensory needs. Some are gonna be, the smallest thing is gonna set them off. The other ones, I'm gonna withdraw because I like doing things. That's where our teachers, really come in the uniqueness, allowing that student to flourish in their best learning environment. So we're gonna be working on training with our staff all throughout this year. Not waiting to the fall to learn what we have, looking at all the different types of situations that could come up, training them. Joshua Raymond has been very valuable to us. He's really given us some leads. We're actually meeting in 2 weeks with Michigan State University's Gifted and Talented program. Oakland Schools has hired a gifted and talented consultant that we're going to be working very closely with. Dr. Schwartz and Carmen talked about Grosse Pointe. We're working with their consultant. So we're learning as much as we can on a daily basis. I was joking with Joshua, the 10,000 hour Malcolm Gladwell, the tipping point. I'm trying to get to that tipping point because there's so many uniquenesses about each kid, and we want to learn that so that each kid can have a unique learning environment and thrive. And you're right, some kids are going to need a lot more sensory, they're going to need a lot more affective. So we're looking at part of the classroom environment being social work services, teacher consultant services. That as a sound, is that we're going to have kids with great language, okay, reading abilities, but poor pragmatics.
Yeah.
So we're going to have our speech and language embedded into the program. They're already working on some training for this. So we understand the unique needs of every child, and we want to be able to meet those needs. So one of the things that's happening also in Washington, D.C. right now, if you're an old fart like me, back in the 70s and 80s, Gifted was actually under the Individuals with Disability Education Act. In the late 80s, it got pulled out of the Individuals with Disability Education Act. Kids that were gifted had an individual educational plan, IEP, and then all of a sudden it stopped. So one of the things that's being talked about right now under IDEA is putting gifted and talented back under IDEA. So these kids are looked at as individuals, not part of a whole class type situation. So there's going to be some interesting things that are going to happen in the next year there as well.
Because that's where that IED aspect really does come in.
Yeah.
The ability to type instead of writing.
Yep.
Tactical.
I will say, they mentioned a couple of reasons about why the program is here, but I think that's really kind of a third reason. My staff has worked a lot with sensory students that have sensory issues, and it's pretty commonplace to see teachers adapting and making accommodations for kids as they go through their day. They have learned a lot over time about some kids with sensory issues and how to support them. And so I think that is a bonus too with it being here in this building.
That's fantastic. And what's the desired, optimal ratio? So if we're looking at 26 to 28 kids-ish, one dedicated teacher, what is the feeling in terms of number of social workers or classroom specialists or aides or?
It's hard for us to put a finger on that so we know what the dynamic of the classroom is, but.
We're looking at a dedicated social worker to the building, and the dedicated social worker would have some increased responsibilities because this program would bring some unique needs for that person. So they would have some other classrooms that they would visit and other school responsibilities, but part of the increase of being in this building is to service this program even more. So to say that there's a ratio of 1 to 13 or 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, that's hard to say right now. But we would look as time goes on, you know, as we see the unique needs, and if we're meeting the needs, we would look at anything like that.
Right, I'm just trying to anticipate
Sure.
the dynamics of a classroom where you have blended ages, blended
Yep.
skills. They
Yep.
are gifted, but I guess I'm concerned that there's not going to be enough in-classroom support on a typical, you know, 3rd and 4th grade class. You know, I may not be the norm, but it feels like one dedicated teacher and a shared social worker, for all intents and purposes, part-time, in that class may not be enough for that
And
kind of.
it may not.
Yeah.
And that
So-
would be something we have to adjust
Yeah.
as need be. Yeah,
So I appreciate talking through it, because I want to
Yeah.
understand kind of
yeah,
how quickly, how
I mean-
nimble we can adjust.
right. I mean, it's difficult for us to go into it with a fixed mindset
Yeah.
per se, because we don't know what the unique needs are going to be of this group
Yes.
until it's together.
Right, and I understand you can't necessarily hire too many people, although you know, because of budgets and
That
but
becomes a problem.
that's why I'm asking now.
Yeah.
And kind of, I want to be transparent with my anxiety that.
So we don't know what the IEPs, if we're gonna have kids with IEPs, if they are with IEPs, what are their needs in the IEPs? Some of the kids may be in the classroom for 3/4 of the day, but they may have access to a resource center or even one of our categorical programs for a little bit of the day as well. Yeah.
We were thinking back here too, I mean, we wouldn't be all the time, but I think there's a strong parent involvement, and that would be very knowledgeable of the subject and the students,
Yeah.
and probably be willing to work in the classroom, and even
Yeah.
and rotating out so that, you know,
Oh, sure.
most of the time there could be somebody extra that could be helping facilitate some of
It's a
that.
great point, Ally. And one of the things that we want to do through the interview process, and just looking before I came over here today, you know, we have 29 applicants for this position already. Is that, yeah, that's awesome. Is that we want somebody who's really good at working with parents and saying, you know, we really want your parental involvement, or getting different, you know, I can see mentors. Maybe we have Chrysler coming in. We have one of the most award-winning robotic teams in the whole state, right here in Avondale schools, and maybe getting some of those people to come over and working with our kids. You know, we see those are the possibilities, endless possibilities for this program.
Yeah. As the teacher goes, you know, we have that position that's posted right now. We're looking to have that person on board really by Thanksgiving, at least identified by Thanksgiving, because that way we can avail that person of trainings, workshops, to get further acclimated to the environment, to get, you know, further professional development under the belt, but also to be a person where parents can get to know, you know, way ahead of when the school year begins. So it really becomes somebody that we want to have identified to start to build those relationships with parents. I guess that's why we're looking at the early identification of this teacher, really to kind of help further develop the program as we get it, you know, as we get ready to go, and also to form those relationships with prospective families. Because we look to identify families certainly by, as you saw at the end of the calendar year, that gives this teacher and those families time to really get together way before the school year begins.
So one of the things that we know about students that are gifted, as well as exceptional students, is transition. There's problems with transition. So one of the things that our goal is going to be is we're going to try to do everything in our power to make such a smooth transition to this building. So we're not going to wait till the fall for the transition. We're going to start looking at transition activities in March, April, May, June, even possibly over the summer, so that when all of a sudden they come here, it's not a new environment, it's not sensory overload, that they have the opportunities, they're processing in their mind. We might even have visual schedules made that they can start to see the success that they're going to have in this program. Those are the things that we're going to look at doing to help our children become successful. Some students may not need that, they may not require that, others may need that, but we want that teacher on board. You know, one of the things we want them to do is, hey, I'm going to come over and meet with you guys and talk with you. We're going to set up a time that, you know, we can meet. bring your child. We want to build those relationships so that it's a real smooth, because we understand that each child has their unique need.
So that I just understand, the program will be launched at Woodlands here in Hartford.
It's gonna be just here.
Just Woodland, okay.
Yeah.
We just happen to have a parent meeting tomorrow.
We have a parent meeting on that side of the
So
district.
that's all.
Okay,
That's all,
and
but-
so if your child goes to Arvin or Deerfield or our Great Grand, then they would have to do the district transfer, in the district transfer
To Wood,
to Woodland.
yeah.
Okay.
But that process would be automatic if your child is in one school, not.
Okay.
How far in the future do you see this going to middle school, high school, and those sorts of things? I know there's stuff kind of already embedded in some of those
Yep,
things.
there's a plan, well, as we look to secondary, because folks want to know, yeah, obviously after you get to fifth grade, you go into middle school. And typically what happens is that the curriculum, as you get into secondary, sixth grade and up, then you have specialized classes with advanced math, advanced ELA, and so on. So you become more differentiated in your choices for selection of courses as you go. So it becomes less self-contained. So elementary becomes more the self-contained model. As you get into middle and high school, you're branching out into more of the honors and advanced level types of classes.
Erin, can you come over for a second and help me with
Aw, come on.
Yeah, just want to be able to show the parents our website.
So there is a plan that as you get to middle school, that there'll be those types of opportunities and options for children to select. So the cohorts will stay the same in some regard by the selections that they take of those.
So, but we're still cognizant of kids that still will get bored, will
Yep.
not have, or
Yep.
this can be more. We'll see.
So this is the website. So as you go on to avondaleschools.org, you would go up to the link that's departments, and under that there's a drop down, and you'll select gifted and talented, and then this will pop up. So you can access information about our program, you can access the application for the program, all within that. So it's departments, and then gifted and talented, and then you'll be able to access a lot of information. And we're continuing to put more and more information as we go on that link in that site.
Right there.
So you can click and get nomination packets. You can click to see what a teacher packet looks like.
You can also share this with your friends, the information about it on here. So,
Like I said, more and more is going to go on there as we go. This is just the beginnings of it, but. Any other questions that you have? Anything else we can assist you with? So in the packet, you have our coordinator's information. Mr. Allworth, Ms. Kennedy, myself, Mr. Schneider, we're all available to answer the questions of yours as you have them. So, don't hesitate.
so if you've got teaching or curriculum, you can call Carmen. If you have questions about disabilities, if you have questions about, support services, you can call me on it. If you've got questions about just the, logistics of drop-off and things like that, you can call Mr. Snyder, our principal here, and we'll be more than happy to work with you as you think about this.
And I'm the complainant. The superintendent's synonymous with it.
Yeah.
You're welcome to call me too. I mean, if you just kind of want to feel for the building with kids in it, I'm happy to do a tour or show you around when it's alive. So, it's a great building.
It's a great, we like working.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that all of our emails are up there. And again, you may have a question at 11 o'clock tomorrow night, and don't hesitate to email us. We'll make sure all of our emails go up there too for you, because, it's a big investment that you're making with your child, and we understand that. But, one of the things that we haven't given enough credit to is we have a superintendent that thinks outside the box. And he cares about all kids, not just this one group of kids. And this has been a long time in the making. And Carmen and I have just been, and Aaron have just been along for the ride. He's been the one that since day one with this. I mean, I don't know too many superintendents that have not missed a gifted and talented meeting when there's many things on his plate, but this has been a passion, and we're very lucky to have someone committed to all kids running our district, so thank you.
It's really a team effort, but, this is a segment of the population that we can no longer afford to, we can't. And so I've been passionate about creating something that addresses those needs. And we've got a great team to assist us in that endeavor, so.
Annette, did you have a question or a comment?
You know what, I'm sorry, I did have a question, something occurred to me. Does the class have specials, like do they have gym, music,
Yeah.
or, okay.
They will, yep,
Right.
they'll have those opportunities, absolutely.
We'll have PE in the gym.
Come to the questions.
What if, after a year, it's not a right fit for your child?
Yep.
Can they usually go back to their home school or, go into the traditional classroom?
Yeah, they can, this isn't, we're not sentencing any kids to something
Right.
that doesn't work. They would have the opportunity to go back into the traditional environment.
Yeah, okay.
We may have parents in December or January say,
Well,
yeah, that's not a problem, we understand that, that happens,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this is just through elementary, or would it carry through middle school?
This is
also?
going to be an elementary program. As we look to how this transitions into middle school, that takes a different look, because at that level you have, then they change classes and you don't have a self-contained teacher. So then we're looking at advanced classes, so they can get on different tracks as they get into middle school with advanced math, advanced reading. So there'll be different avenues of abilities that they want to pursue once they get to that level. So the cohort will still stay together in some fashion as they move through advanced coursework there.
I mean, I'm here because his teachers mentioned it to us.
Okay.
So,
All right, good.
but he has some not to air on my son's business, but, okay, he's on the spectrum, but he's also extremely bright. So unfortunately, sometimes you don't know if his characteristics that he have are because he's very bright or because he's on the spectrum, or it's a combination of the two things. But, I mean, this is my child in this box, but he struggles with expressive writing, which isn't uncommon with a child that's on the spectrum.
Right? Yeah.
So, as far as like his work looks, sometimes it's not complete, it's not very detailed, whereas if he sat with you, it's this whole detailed story of everything. I mean, at that point, is that taken into consideration at the consideration
Sure.
process, or is it something that we should just not even really look at?
No, it is taken in, because first off, their IEPs are still valid in the classroom.
Okay.
So that won't stop at all. So we know each child's different, each child has their own unique abilities, and we'll be addressing that.
Okay.
So, some of our students may be better off writing with a pencil or pen, others are better at using a computer, others are better dictating. So we'll take each one of those into consideration when we're working with our kids. Again, we're not putting our kids in a box and saying there's only one way to do it. They're able to use their creativity, they're able to use their giftedness to flourish their academic skills.
Okay, because I mean, just like I said, report card wise and things like that, the writing doesn't look the greatest. But
Sure.
to sit and have a conversation with them, it's very detailed, very elaborate, sometimes stuff I don't even know. But he can't seem to get it from here onto a piece of paper. So, which isn't, like I said, uncommon, a child on the spectrum, so.
Yeah.
What's IEP again?
Individual education plan?
That I'm guessing every student has the record or something.
No, it's for students with disabilities. There's some students with disabilities that are high performing academically, and they're granted what's called an individual education plan because there's some things that may cause them to have an adverse effect to their education, socially, emotionally, communicatively, health, learning. So. Any other questions? They're all good questions. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, our daughter, she's in a kindergarten this year. So what program will she have by next fall if she, does?
That's a great question. So one of the things that we're working on as a district right now is to have a common child study process. In the past, most schools would take a child that's struggling, who's just not working to their standards, and they would go to the child study process. But what we're going to be looking at doing is taking children that are also gifted, that are advanced, taking them to the child study process, and the child study team can come up with ways of saying, we can do this, this, and this in the classroom to help meet their unique needs. So we don't want to, again, put our kids in kindergarten first, 5th or 6th grade in a box. We want to help them in any ways we can. So the child study process is the way we're going to do that for our other children.
Any other questions that we can answer?
So if you have a question, and sometimes your questions go, I'm driving home and my question, or the next day at work I have a question, on our website is our emails, our phone numbers. Again, it's in the Avondale School website. If you go to departments, it's gifted and
We're
talented.
trying to bring it up for you, but we're having some
Yeah. And you're welcome to email us, call us, our numbers are up there. Anything curriculum, teaching will be Mrs. Kennedy. Anything, pretty much with the program, you can give to me or Hillary, and we'll be able to address that for you. Again, big decisions for your children, but we're here to try to help you with those decisions and make sure this is a positive learning environment for your child.
So please don't hesitate to call or email us, any one of us. We'll assist you in whatever way we can. Oh, there it is.
Almost,
We got it.
almost.
So it's just departments right there?
On our website, you hit the department tab and it's under gifted and talent. And then underneath that, we packaged quite a bit of information. The applications are there. You scroll down,
There's contacts?
contacts are there. Yep.
There's the
You
application
need to tell her.
on there. And then there's some useful information.
We have some articles for folks, and we'll continue to add new articles, create like a library of gifted and talented information that folks can access on there.
Can I add something?
Yep.
The principal at Woodland, who would be your child's principal, Mrs. Schneider, her contact information is on there. If you want to go see the building, just call her directly and she'll set up a tour. You can take your student and see, get a feel for the building.
Yeah,
It's a great place.
She'll arrange with you a personal tour of the facility, so you can see the pods I was talking about, the instructional areas outside the classrooms. You get a real good feel for the building. So she'll be more than happy to take you on a personal tour.
So again, please don't hesitate to ask any questions, and we thank you for your time tonight. And we appreciate you coming. Thank you. But again, don't hesitate. If you have a question, email us. We'll also put our contact information if you'd like to call us. We'll make sure that gets up on our website.
Yes,
Yeah, you guys, yeah, because that's our webmaster right here. I'll ruin the web, yeah.
And
So
I'll
again,
put
please call
complaint
us.
department next to Dr. Shores.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you coming out tonight. Thank you.
Really wonderful, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
I'm
And
not
we'll-
Mr. I'm just,